My mother was a smoker. She smoked her whole life. She was addicted to nicotine. When she turned 71, a little after that, she was diagnosed with lung cancer. No one came to me and said, don't treat her because she got what she deserved. If it's heroin or cocaine or alcohol, we say, well, they decided they're getting what they deserved.
Chris Christie's emotional moment that went viral this week. More than 5 million people saw that clip, including some non-Republicans like Mia Farrow. The frank discussion about addiction had people like the actress saying, quote, here's a Chris Christie I've never seen, and he's impressive. Some crossover appeal for the New Jersey governor. That's where we bring in our roundtable for today. With us now, Liz Peek, columnist for the Fiscal Times. How are you doing, Liz?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
All right, so this week started out pretty strong for Chris Christie, but it ended on perhaps a sour note. Yesterday, Christie learned that he would not be on the main stage for next week's debate due to low poll numbers, which are about 2% nationally. He's been strong in previous debates, but not strong enough to avoid the happy hour scene next week. I guess it could be worse, though. But what's your take? Is Chris Christie having a good week or a bad week?
Well, obviously, the debate decision is pretty important because most people these days, I would assume, are tuning in mainly for the later debate, the one featuring the main candidates. I thought Christie actually had a pretty good debate last time and, got his voice out there, got seen. Obviously, 4 years ago, this was a fellow everyone took very seriously. They thought he really had a shot at getting the Republican nomination. So this has to be disappointing for him, I think. And let's face it, being in the lower tier debate, you just don't get much attention. And that's what he wants. That's what all these guys want at this point. The comments you talked about did do him some good, but unfortunately they were sort of trumped, excuse the expression, by other candidates coming out with even more heartfelt and personal stories about drug addiction and other addictions. And of course, we all know that's kind of heading for New Hampshire, which is dealing with a really serious heroin problem.
Right. We'll talk about Jeb Bush in a second. We also heard from Carly Fiorina, and I think this also might, what happened with Lindsey Graham in the last debate. He clearly dominated the undercard debate the last time around, but that didn't do anything for him. And in fact, he's not going to be debating at all this time around because his poll numbers are so low. So I don't know if Christie can gain anything from this. And also, Mike Huckabee knocked off the main debate stage as well. Here's what Chris Christie had to say when he found out about the debate.
I'll debate people wherever they want to debate on whatever the important issues I think there are for the country.
I guess that's the right attitude.
What do you think, Liz? Can he get back up onto that main stage? I mean, Carly Fiorina, let's not forget.
She did it. Lindsey Graham
was in the low tier,
couldn't do it.
Again, that was a few debates ago, but is it possible for him to climb back up?
Well, I think it is possible. Again, money's going to have a lot to do with this. And Christie actually had a fairly successful third quarter money-raising spree. He has more money in the bank than some of these other candidates do. It's not great. He's not in great condition. But he's going to have to spend some money in New Hampshire, in Iowa, to make some noise. And, yeah, he could possibly do so well in this undercard debate. But don't forget that when Carly Fiorina really sort of surged after her performance, an awful lot of people tuned into that first debate. I'm just wondering if that's going to still be the case this time. And here's why I think that. The last debate, Lindsey Graham really nailed it, if you remember, in the so-called undercard debate. It did nothing for him. So, I think that's pretty tough.
Well, let's go back to Jeb Bush and let's keep playing this game of was it a good week or a bad week. You brought him up. This is how his week started out in Iowa.
But just talk about your resilience, because some people don't think you know how to fight.
Man, they don't know me. They don't know me.
Could you sign this to Luke?
I eat nails when I wake up, and then I have breakfast.
Where does it come from, your ability to fight back from adversity?
Oh, it's just I'm a grinder. This is like, for me, the greater the adversity, the more, first of all, it means I'm going to get better. I got to get better. I know I have to get better. I have enough self-awareness, and I don't have this gigantic ego that says, well, they're just stupid.
First off, I just couldn't get this out of my head this week. His whole reaction, that look on his face.
It's almost like he's punch drunk in that soundbite.
Yeah. What was your reaction, Liz, when you saw him say that?
I just think he's really struggling. I just don't think this campaign is the one that he wanted to participate in. And almost every move he makes has been sort of wrong-footed. And I think when you have enough issues like that, enough missteps, then you begin to doubt everything that comes out of your mouth. And I think that's what we're seeing with him. There's real lack of self-confidence. You know, I eat nails before breakfast. I mean, yikes.
I couldn't tell if he was joking, but I think he was kind of serious the way he said it. You know what I mean?
He's trying.
Obviously,
the eyes. And also,
nails,
Politico put up this cartoon this week of what Jeb is kind of facing with his family keep coming up, trying to push a big head of his brother up an impossibly steep cliff.
Yeah.
That's kind of the challenge that Bush is facing.
So I'm guessing we're going to say bad week.
Bad week for Jeb. We're going to come back and talk a little bit more about the debate criteria. Is it really fair? We mentioned Christie getting bumped off the stage. Is it fair?
I don't know. Kind of some questions there with that. Also coming up next on Newsmax Now, stay tuned for the inspiring real-life story of an Afghani warrior who defied the Taliban and saved the life of a Navy SEAL. You're watching Newsmax Now.
And we welcome you back to today's roundtable. We're joined again by Fiscal Times columnist Liz Peek. And as we discussed before, Christie and Mike Huckabee have been demoted from the main debate stage for next week's debate. This is from the Washington Post. I found this very interesting. Christie is rising fast in New Hampshire, and according to two new recent polls, runs ahead of Rand Paul and Carly Fiorina, both of whom will be on the main stage. And in some polls, Christie has quadrupled his support since the last debate. Meantime, Huckabee outranks Kasich and Bush in the latest Iowa polls as well. Liz, is this really a fair way to determine who gets up on the stage?
I guess there have to be some ground rules, and clearly Fox Business is trying to play a part, rightly or wrongly, in winnowing the field. I mean, I think you can kind of question, you know, is that their role? I mean, is it important for them to knock people off the debate stage? I don't know. I mean, that's someone else's decision, but they set the rules, and these guys just didn't measure up. But I'm interested in the Washington Post commentary, because it seems to me that Christie did come out of that last debate with some momentum. I was surprised that it didn't show up more in the polls, but maybe in New Hampshire in particular, it has. And so, I mean, I think it, you know, that kind of really strikes a wrong note, doesn't it? And by the way, his numbers versus Rand Paul, you know, I don't think Rand Paul should be on the stage. So
this is where I think the RNC should have stepped in a long time ago when they were trying to get a handle on this debate process years ago after the 2012 election. They should have set the criteria for determining what these polls are and how they're going to impact who gets on that stage, I guess.
Yeah, and not have it be movable, because remember the last time around, all of a sudden they were sort of shifting the goalposts in order to accommodate Carly Fiorina. Well,
and
obviously
in the first debate, too, it seemed very strange that John Kasich made it up there on the stage. I guess you can't have the governor of Ohio not there on the main debate stage.
Yeah, there needs to be some system as far as determining the criteria. Like you said, it's very confusing. Is it up to the media? Is it up to, and which polls determine that? Because like we were saying, they're all over the place, it seems like.
Yeah, and let's remember, the polls aren't perfect. I mean, the Kentucky governor's race is a great example of when someone is surging, very rarely do the polls really capture that. The Republican who won really didn't, you know, no poll showed him in the lead, and he won the contest by quite a wide margin. So, you know, I think we could spend all night talking about how the polls don't really reflect the current reality. But I think it really does argue for sort of stricter and sort of enforceable standards that don't change all the time, because I do think it kind of leads to this kind of, well, disappointment. If you're a Christie fan or a Huckabee fan, this is really a pretty tough thing to happen.
Well, and it does make it look like you're kind of cherry picking, you know?
Yeah.
Things like that.
All right, well, Christie, we mentioned this as well, had that very emotional moment last week, and you talked, Liz, about how some of the other candidates chimed in with their own stories, including Jeb Bush, who had an interview on his tour bus yesterday about his own family's issues with addiction. Take a listen.
My daughter's addictions, for whatever reason, and I don't need to get into the specifics of what her diagnosis is today, and she's drug-free, thank God. She went through hell, and so did her mom, and so did her dad. And it was both in a private setting, but then it became very public when I was governor, and it wasn't easy.
I mean, I think right there is one of the most human moments we've seen from Jeb Bush yet. We heard the Carly Fiorina story elsewhere. Liz, I mean, this is an issue that's really playing out across the country. You mentioned the problems in New Hampshire. I think this goes to show us just how important it is for candidates to talk about realistic solutions to this, whether they're Democrats or Republicans.
Well, I certainly think for Republicans who have a sort of general knock of being heartless and all about spending money and so forth, this kind of personal narrative goes a long way towards just what you said, making them seem human. And it was, I think, important for Jeb to have that because, again, he looks so flustered all the time these days. This was, you know, this was very real, very touching. And again, it is specifically of interest to New Hampshire voters, I'm sure, because, wow, you know, the heroin thing there is just huge. And as it is in Vermont, I mean, somehow the heroin problem really has a specificity and a real impact there.
It's in Ohio, too, just last weekend on 60 Minutes as well. It was, they talked about the heroin epidemic. It's really nationwide and very concerning. And we'll leave it there. Liz Peek, thanks so much for... Oh, okay. I guess the clock's wrong.
I guess the clock is wrong, so we're going to keep on chatting then. Sorry, Liz, we were going to cut. Okay, I was just hearing from my producer. We can still chat a little bit, but one thing that I want to bring up, listening to that, I don't know if this is something that's an influence of Christie or Trump and Carson because they have that, they don't sound like politicians, they sound more human, so I don't know if that's kind of influencing the candidates in a good way. Or do you think this comes across as like just a copycat mood from Jeb? Did you believe it?
Oh, I thought it was totally believable. I mean, I can't imagine how a parent struggles with this kind of problem. That is not the kind of thing that you make into sort of political confetti. I mean, you know, I've had friends.
Liz, we're going to have to leave it there. I'm sorry for the time confusion, but we appreciate having you.
Thank you for having me. Take care.